Thanks for tuning in today, guys. Today's video is going to be about making jigs. Have you ever been out there fishing, getting ready for a tournament, and you find a good bite under docks, or a good bite on a jig in general, and you got this 3/8 ounce jig bite going on a football head, and man, I just can't wait to whack them, so let me get all my jigs together. And then you realize, well dang, that's the only jig I got like that. So what do? You're gonna jump in the car, you're gonna run down to the tackle store. We'll see if you can't find one. When you get to the tackle store, they're out. They don't have any either. So you're stuck like Chuck at that point. I've been there, you've been there. So what I decided to do to keep from having that problem again is just go ahead and purchase the equipment that I need in order to make my own jigs, so that I know without a shadow of a doubt I'm going to have that jig at any given moment. I find it more rewarding when I can personally take the stuff that I have, make a jig to my liking, exactly what I want, go out there and catch fish, bring them to the scales, and take home money because I made that jig. It just means that much more to me. I'll just give you a prime example. I fish a team trail, American Bass Anglers team trail, with a gentleman named Don Perkins, and we were at Neely Henry Lake with my jig. It's a swim jig that I make. The colors that I want on my skirt, I made a bluegill color. I caught the biggest fish of that tournament and brought home $1,150 with that one fish. And we placed in the money as well, so we got more money on top of that. But still, that gratification, it just meant so much to me, knowing that I made that jig that caught that fish, and also knowing that the bass in that lake, they haven't seen that jig yet. You can't buy them at the store. I make my own colors. So it just means that much more to me, knowing that I've got something in that water that more than likely the fish hadn't seen. And sometimes that little advantage, it can pay off. So we're going to get into the basic materials that you need to make your personalized jigs. Start out with, need a mold. I personally get my molds from Do It Molds. This is a football head mold. They make different types. You're going to need a pair of pliers. Get into that here in a little bit. You'll also need some lead. That's a little ingot of lead. I don't know how to say it. Maybe y'all can tell me. Anyway, you need lead. You'll need a jig hook like this. Put in your mold. You also need one of these little pins that go in your mold as well. These things are, all they do is just go in there and make a hole for your weed garden, which you'll need as well. That's one of these right here. Okay? You'll also need some powder paint. You'll need a heat source in order to heat your lead back up to ensure that this powder paint sticks. Okay, and this is what I use as a heat gun. No particular brand that you can buy. This just happens to be a Wagner. I think I bought it at Walmart for a little bit of nothing. Okay, and the last thing that you're going to do is put your skirts on your jigs. So, I forgot, weed guards. You're also going to need glue. You'll need a 2-part epoxy that's personally what I use. Everything that I'm showing you is just stuff that I personally use. There's different ways of doing this thing. This is just my method, okay? So, two-part epoxy, no particular brand. I just like this Loctite. Again, you can go to your local stores, and most stores carry that brand. And I've got some skirt material, okay? You can buy skirts that are pre-made, or you can buy material like this right here and make your own skirts. And like I said earlier, the advantage like I said, of buying your own skirts is that you don't have to worry about anybody else having that color of jig on the body of water that you're fishing if you personalize your skirts. More than likely, nobody else will have that color. And to get those skirts made, you will need this skirt tool, which is just a tube like this, which has a little cone end that goes onto it. That's in order to get your little rubber band. I don't know if you can see that little bitty rubber band in my hand, but that little bad boy right there is going to hold that skirt on that jig head. So that's lead. One more thing, you'll need lead, a heat source to heat your lead. You can use either a heat pot, or you can use like what I've got right here. This is just a propane tank hooked up. It's like a cooker, outdoor cooker is what it is. And you can probably see it already fired up, and it's heating my lead right now, melting it up, and we'll get ready to pour some jigs as soon as that thing gets all that lead good and hot. So stand by for jig making. Okay guys, I've got my lead hot enough, it's ready to pour. So what I want to do is go ahead and get my hook and get my pin and my mold before I go and pour this lead into the mold. Okay, so I'll give you a brief example, show you how to do this. Take your hook, put it in there like so. Should line up good. I'm using the 3/8 right here because that's the size I want. Put my little pin in there. Then this thing should close, your mold should close, and there should be no gaps at the top. If you have gaps in there, it didn't close all the way, and you're going to have lead going everywhere. Okay, go ahead and pour our lead. Set this down. Let that cool off a second. Pull it out of the jig, out of the mold, pull the jig out of the mold. And that's what you're going to have right there, okay? You're going to have this, so I've got a little extra right here I need to get rid of. And then this right here, I'm going to have to get rid of it. So what I'm going to do is just slightly bend it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, till it finally just pops off. And that's what you're left with right there, okay? Alright, there's one more quick thing that you're going to need when you're making these jigs. After you powder paint your head, this pin right here is going to have paint on it, okay? So what I like to do, of course, you're going to pull the pin out. I like to put it in a mason jar right here with some stripper on there. Okay, I put stripper in the jar, take my pin out, it's got paint on it, and put it in there. And after I get done making my jig, I make sure that all this stuff is soaked in good, and I drain it and wash off my pins and get all the excess paint off my pins so that I can reuse them. I use metal pins. They also make Teflon pins, but I personally like the metal pins. Alright, so now we're going to get into the powder coating, and I apologize in advance for the noise, but I'm going to have to turn on my heat gun in order to get my lead hot for the paint to stick. So, alright, so what I've done, I have took my powder paint and I've poured it into this, I don't even know what to call this thing, to be honest with you, but it's a gadget that I made. Got an air pump right here, it goes into this tube, and the air blows up through the coffee filter. And I've got attached this PVC pipe, and what it does, said I pour my powder paint on top of the coffee filter, and what it does is just let that paint float just like that right there with that air blowing through it. And all that does is keeps me from using so much paint. There's a lot of people, they'll heat up their lead and just dip it straight into the powder paint itself. Okay, that's not what I do, because you use a lot of paint that way. Alright, we got our jig made right there, and we're about to put some powder paint on it. But this little piece right here, I don't know if you can see it, it sticks up right here on the end of the head. Some people take a file and file that down and make it flat. I personally just use my vise right here. It's got a big flat piece of metal, and just tap it on there a few times, and it flattens it out like so. So what I do is just go ahead and heat this thing up in front of this heat gun for about 10 or 15 seconds. And then I will take this pin out, put it in my paint stripper, and at that point I'll go ahead and take my jig. Well, that's good right there. See there? There you go. I'll go ahead and take my jig, and I'll put it in my easy bake oven so I can bake it. There you go. I'll bake that at 300 degrees for 20 minutes, and that will cure that paint onto that lead. Alright guys, we've got our jigs powder coated right there. We baked them. The paint's not going to chip. So at this point we're going to put in our weed guards, and like I said, what you're going to need is a 2-part epoxy. So what I take is I just squeeze it out on this wax paper, and I'll just take one of these little sticks right here you can pick up at a hobby section at Walmart, and just stir it up real good. And once you've got it stirred up good, it's a very, very simple process. You've got your hole right there ready to go. You simply take your weed guard, dip it in the glue, and stick it in the hole. Make sure it's in there good. There it went. And that's it, guys. That right there will need to cure for about an hour before I put my skirt on, and then probably 24 hours before I actually use it. So next steps, making skirts. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and make the skirt while the epoxy continues to dry on the weed guards. That'll kind of get us caught up a little bit. So basically what you need is this skirt making tool right here, which comes with a little wire puller that's bent on one end. It's got a hook on the other end, bent right there, so you can hook to your skirt and pull it through. Then of course you'll need your little rubber skirt holder, whatever they call this thing. Anyway, all I do is just slide that up on there, and I'll pull this piece off right here. Just drop it down. Okay, don't need it. Leave it right there. I'll go ahead and put my wire through the tube, and I've already got my skirt material laid out. What I like to do is use 3 tabs. That's not too many, and that's more than enough. So I'll take my colors that I want in order and hook them on. This one I'm using a dark green pumpkin candy, a blue, and another dark green pumpkin candy. Okay? Once I get them on there, make sure they're on there good and snug and even, I'll simply pull them through. Pull them through just like that. I will grab each tab and kind of get them evened up a little bit. You see we got a little excess right here. I'll kind of pull that out to about halfway. Slide the little rubber O-ring on top. And at this point, I got all 3 tabs right here. All 3 of them. I'll go ahead and clip them. Cut them off. Finish pulling this through, and I've got the rest of them right there on the other end. I'll trim them off as well. Now what I've got here is a skirt. Okay, simple as that. Alright guys, I got my jig made. Got my weed guard on. It's been about an hour since I put that on, so the glue should be cured enough to at least put my skirt on, which I made earlier, and it's right here. So what I like to do first is just go ahead and take this weed guard and trim it to my liking. And I'll cut about that much of it off. Go ahead and trim that up. I'll take my skirt, flare it out evenly so it'll go on better. Yeah, something like that. Slide it in that O-ring, center it up good, all the way up the hook, up the shaft of the jig, and then I kind of play with it a little bit to get it to where I want it. And basically what you got is this right here at this point. So you see all these little ends that are jagged, loose, and not even with itself. I will take all these and trim it up with my knife or scissors to make it all even. Make sure it looks good. Yeah. I'll just go right there, trim it up, and make it all even. So there you go. Now that's your finished product right there. Okay, see how even that is? And that's what you want. Now you got your jig exactly how you want it. All you gotta do now is put a trailer on it and go fishing. So that wraps it up for the jig making tutorial. Appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you out on the lake. Enjoy your day.